In section 8.5, we're going to be learning how to determine the sample size. So if you increase the sample size, we've talked about how that will reduce the margin of error. So when you increase the sample size, the margin of error will be smaller, and this is going to provide a narrower confidence interval. So the sample size that we need to get this given margin of error, say we want a certain margin of error, we can figure out what the sample size needs to be. So we're kind of working backwards here. We can figure that out if we have the confidence level and the population standard deviation. So here is the formula for margin of error right here. And they broke the standard error down. Remember, that's how we calculate the standard error of the mean. Okay, so now what they did was they said, well, let's isolate n, let's solve for n. Well, they got the square root of n by itself, and then finally they solved it and got rid of the radical sign. So basically, it's showing you how they went, how it started with the margin of error formula and worked itself backwards to isolate n. Alright, so this is the formula we're going to use in the box to determine what the sample size needs to be for a given confidence level or a given margin of error. But I do want to emphasize the margin of error consists of two parts. The z-score, and remember the z-score is based off of what your confidence level is. Your z-score and your standard error of the mean. So anytime we multiply those together, that gives us the margin of error. Okay, and here's an example. We're actually going to work one. If we don't know the population standard deviation, we can estimate it with the sample standard deviation. And what we can do is take a smaller sample from the population and calculate the sample standard deviation and use it as an estimate. We've done that before with the t-distribution, where we replaced the standard deviation of the population with the sample standard deviation. Okay. And then here is the same thing to determine the sample size for a proportion. So you can see the difference here is P, the sample proportion, minus 1 minus the sample proportion. And so in order to calculate the required sample size to estimate the population, we need to know the sample proportion. And it's just talking about that and then calculating it. So we're going to be doing this. We're going to be calculating the sample size in this section. So this is just an overview. In the next few videos, we'll work some problems together.